Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 9th February 2021. In this video, we'll be looking at this couple of issues. One with respect to the Himalayan ecosystem in the backdrop of the deluge that we have witnessed in Uttarakhand yesterday. And the second article is about what Finance Commission has done with respect to the agricultural exports in our country. Yesterday, a part of Uttarakhand Glacier, which is a part of the Nanda Devi mountain system, has created a huge flood and has washed away literally hundreds of homes. It has caused havoc and brought life to a standstill, highlighting the importance of adapting to the climate change. In this context, India's official stance has always been that the polluter pays principle applies. But we have to understand that environment has no geographical boundaries. It will impact all the countries across the world. Given this context and the fact that the developed world is not paying heed to the problems of the vulnerabilities of the developing countries like us, we have to take care of our own ecosystems. And in this context, Himalayan ecosystem is a very sensitive ecosystem. If we take a look at the Himalayan ecosystem and the disasters in this region, first of all, geographically, it is still a very young system and therefore it is very active seismically. That is, we can witness a lot of earthquakes and tectonic activity in this region. And in 1991, when Theri Dam was constructed in this region, there was an earthquake. It was purely caused because of dam activities, dam construction activities. Similarly, we have witnessed the region's vulnerability when we have had a cloudburst in 2013, causing one of the worst devastations in the history of independent India. Similarly, yesterday it was believed that it was a glacial lake outburst flood, or it was caused because of the rupture of a dam or a small check dam where previously there was a glacier. However, there are conflicting reports from the Central Water Commission saying that it is probably because of a landslide, and we don't have a conclusive evidence yet. But the bottom line that we have to take away from this entire incident is the fact that this ecosystem is very vulnerable to disasters. And it has been proved time and again. And one of the major reason for that is the anthropogenic development without considering the major aspect of seismicity in this region. We have one of the highest probability of density of dams in this region. So there is a vision to lay down dams across all the river valleys in this region. If that is actually realized, we'll have 32 kilometers. We'll have, for every 32 kilometers, we'll have one dam, which is probably one of the highest densities across the world. But there is always an impact because of these sort of decisions. If you don't consider this aspect of seismicity and natural geography and its vulnerability, what are the impacts? Naturally, the first one is earthquakes. The second one is, since this geography holds water bodies, there is always a probability of floods in this region. And since they live on slopes, there is always a possibility of these floods causing havoc in the valley regions. The next thing we are talking about is, because of soil erosion and other activities in this region, because of the anthropogenic development, we'll have biodiversity loss. When a biodiversity loss happens, it disturbs the natural balance of that ecosystem. When that natural balance is tilted against us, the odds are that we'll have disastrous events of magnanimous amount. Because if you take the look at the loss that these sort of small disasters cause, you can imagine the impact of a mega disaster that it is believed to hold within its own belt. Himalayan system is supposedly one of the most sensitive ecosystems across the world, and it is believed that there is a mega earthquake that is waiting to happen in this region. If that indeed happens, and if there are dams in that region, there is an irreparable loss that can be caused to this region. So there is a need for restraint in economic activity in this region. Similarly, time and again we have had judicial bodies warning the local governments that there is a need to maintain a minimum ecological flow. So this dam activity will even impact that minimum ecological flows, and if that minimum ecological flows are not maintained, again it will impact the biodiversity and all the natural geographical processes that are involved. So it is important to understand this. Niti Aayog has recently come up with a document saying that we have to bring in this idea of environmental accounting. That is, for ecosystem services, we have to create a economic value so that environment is respected. But at the same time, we have to understand that we simply cannot value the um, economic value of ecosystem services, especially in the terms of disaster, because if they cause disaster, we will be losing much more than economics. We will be losing certain important aspect of our society, that is human potential. We are talking about human lives here. So therefore there is a need to completely restrain ourselves from this sensitive areas and not go for this mindless dam building in this region. That is the gist of this article. Finance Commission sows seeds of change. This article is with respect to the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission. Now, when we are talking about the 15th Finance Commission, we have to understand certain basics. What is the objective of Finance Commission? It is to create a formula to devolve funds or share funds between center and states. So, as per this, there are two kinds of transfers. One is the vertical distribution. We are talking about a divisible pool. Imagine there is a basket of say 100 rupees. Now, as per the formula of this 15th Finance Commission, 41 rupees should be given to states directly. It will not go into Consolidated Fund of India. So the rest of the money, that is 59 rupees, will go into the Consolidated Fund of India. Now, in this basket that we're talking about, how is that basket filled? Or 100 rupees is the tax collection from the central taxes. What is not a part of this? Or to rephrase everything that I've said, what is the pool of tax resources of the union government that will be shared with the states? So we are talking about what is called as divisible pool. Now there are certain taxes or certain items which are completely excluded from this gross tax revenue. That is the divisible pool of this 100 rupees. What are those? First one is the cost of collection of taxes. These exclude the following. First one is the cost of collection of taxes, that will be completely excluded. Cesses and surcharge do not form a part of this divisible pool. The taxes that are collected from union territories are also not a part of this. And national calamity contingency duty, this is another duty which is not a part of this divisible pool. So in short, only those which are collected from the states will be given back to the states. Now, one important aspect of this formula as to how this divisible pool is divided between states, there are certain parameters which are very important for our preliminary exam. So what are the parameters? Income distance. So this constitutes 45% of the weightage. Now what is this income distance? It is the distance of the state that we are talking about from the richest state. So that distance will account for 45% of the formula. The second one is with respect to population, because a state which has higher population will require higher resources. So this is for the 2011 census and it constitutes 15%. Again, if we keep on giving those states which reproduce more or which have more population, like say for example Uttar Pradesh has 20 crores, we would be doing injustice to the southern states which have performed well on various parameters with respect to family planning and controlling the population growth. So keeping that aspect in consideration, demographic performance accounts for 12.5% of the total weight. And the next one is the area of the state, which again is 15%. And the next one is very significant: forest and ecological cover constitutes 10%. This is an opportunity cost. Imagine a state like Madhya Pradesh, which has dense forest cover, and you say that since Madhya Pradesh has so much forest area, it is not supposed to cut down these trees and opt for the so called economic development. But they also have people to feed, they also have a lot of population to address. So they are losing out certain opportunities if you are not asking them to cut down the trees and conserve this forest. They need certain amount, right? So considering that factor also, which is 10%, the finance commission gives its formula. And the next one is tax and fiscal effort. In our second ARC committee report, we always talk about funds, functions, and functionaries. And in this, when we're talking about functionaries, the major complaint is that the local authorities are not proactive, or some reports even went to the extent of calling the state local authorities to be lazy enough not to put effort to collect more taxes. In order to address that, there is a policy design by the finance commission to incentivize this fiscal efforts and tax efforts, more tax collection at local areas, and that constitutes around 2.5%. So these are the parameters. Please try to remember them. They're very important for our prelims exam. In our constitution, Article 275 empowers the finance commission to give certain grants. That is, from the consolidated fund of India, the government, that is the central government, will have certain powers to give away money to the states based on certain parameters. Now, what are those different types of grants? One is based on revenue deficit, the other one is with respect to local body, the third one is disaster management and state specific to address certain problems of the states, and finally we're talking about the sector specific. Since we don't have the bandwidth to discuss all this elaborately, I am just showing that this article, whichever we are discussing now, is relevant to one of the 9 sectors of the sector specific grants under the 15th Finance Commission recommendations based on the Article 275's provisions. So, in this sector specific grants, 9 sectors were there, and one of the sector is agriculture. So, this article is about that. Now, this sector specific grant on agriculture is based on performance with respect to 4 parameters. Recently, we have had a ruckus created because of the debate on farm bills with respect to Essential Commodities Act and contract farming. So, the previous version of the Finance Commission report with respect to this agricultural parameters included that contract farming and agri-market reforms. But in this version, the parameters were removed. What are the 4 parameters? One is with respect to land lease reforms. The second one is with respect to efficient use of water. The third one is with respect to exports of agricultural produce. And the final one is agricultural sector's contribution to Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. So in this context, let us examine how this route taken by the Finance Commission is much more effective in reviving agriculture rather than going for a very contested farm laws. One of the major good reforms that was hailed in recent times is direct benefit transfer or income support to farmers rather than going for subsidies, because there is a lot of problem in subsidies. There is a problem of leakage. There is a problem of identifying the beneficiaries. Therefore, the government, taking cue from state schemes like Odisha's Kalia or Telangana's Raitu Bandhu, wherein a fixed amount per acre is transferred to the farmer directly instead of giving him subsidies for inputs. He goes to the open market and buys whatever he feels is right rather than buying the inferior subsidized goods. So this prompts a free market economy in agricultural inputs as well. But one of the major problem in this area is the fact that for identifying the beneficiaries, farmers are always related to land. And in this context, we have to understand that 40% of the farmers don't earn this land at all. Therefore, the subsidy is directly going to the landowner who is not farming at all. And on the top of that, the person who is actually doing the farming, that is 40% of these tenant farmers, don't end up getting access to this income support. And on the top of that, they even pay rent to the landowner. So because of this factor, it was realized that we need a land reform to recognize even land leasing as a formal methodology to identify beneficiaries and give directly to them rather than this landowner. In this context, a model land leasing law was created, and all the states which adopt this land leasing will get a part of this grant. So that is the first move. The second one is with respect to augmenting the groundwater stock. Now, this is self-explanatory because we have to maintain our groundwater levels, and there is an incentive not to go towards populist policies like free groundwater or free power, which promotes indiscriminate usage of this groundwater. So policies which discourage that will be incentivized now through Finance Commission's formula, and it is a good sign. The next thing that we're talking about is agricultural exports. In the wake of the debates with respect to the farm laws, we have witnessed how our agricultural export sector has been curtailed time and again because of various laws like Essential Commodities Act. Now, just because the Essential Commodities Act was amended, there is a fear that corporates might take over and eventually reduce the income of the farmers. Instead of the government explicitly saying that we are removing the Essential Commodities Act, what if the state governments are given the responsibility to increase agricultural exports in order to access these funds? So there is a incentive for states also to increase agricultural exports, and it is a win-win situation rather than fighting with the governments directly. Say for example, if Punjab increases its exports and if the export ecosystem contributes to the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision of the state, it is going to get certain money. This is the formula laid down by Finance Commission, and the amount is not small. We're talking about a amount of 45,000 crores. So we can definitely leverage this idea. And the last pillar that we have been talking about is that of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, when we're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are trying to increase our capacities indigenously. Now, one might wonder how it is really relevant for agricultural sector. But to everyone's surprise, we have to understand that we are still 40 to 50% short of meeting the demand of certain crops like oil seeds. We still import a significant amount of oil seeds. We still have to depend on African countries for our proteins, that is dals, etc., in times of distress. So in order to develop that self-reliant capacity building, if states produce these oil seeds and other crops which reduce our import bill, even for that there is an incentive given by the Finance Commission. So this is a very good article and a very important one which can change the face of agriculture in states if taken seriously by the states. So that is the gist of this article.